Hello, welcome to Old Virginia Homes. The noted American architect Louis Sullivan said, "But the building's identity resided in the ornament." This sentiment really resonates when it comes to the house we'll be visiting today. From the outside, this house looks very similar to many other Georgian-style brick homes built by 18th century Americans with means. Don't get me wrong, it's a handsome, stately house that definitely turns heads. But the design is a familiar one for old house lovers, and it might be hard to identify it in a lineup of other homes built during this same era. However, once you wander inside, and particularly when you look up, you'll have no problem at all distinguishing this house from all the others. Betty Washington Lewis, George Washington's sister, and her husband, the successful Virginia merchant Fielding Lewis, chose exquisite ornamentation for their home that reflects refinement, signifying wealth and gentry status. Join me as we visit Kenmore, an old Virginia home in Fredericksburg. Let's go. It's hard to imagine the original setting of Kenmore, which now occupies one city block, about 3 acres, in the middle of a residential neighborhood. But Fielding Lewis's plantation was once 1,270 acres in size. It was also named Millbrook. The name Kenmore was first used by Samuel Gordon, who purchased the house and 200 acres in 1819, and named the house after his ancestral home in Scotland. The house took years to build. Fielding Lewis and his wife, Betty Washington Lewis, acquired the property in 1752, but didn't move in until 1775. Interestingly, Fielding Lewis was originally married to his second cousin, Catherine Washington, and they had 3 children before she died. He then married 16-year-old Betty, who was also his second cousin, and they had 11 children together. In addition to being a merchant and planter, Fielding Lewis was elected by Spotsylvania County voters to represent them in the House of Burgesses. He also commanded the local militia, and as the colony's relations with Britain began to sour, Lewis accepted appointment as Commissary General of Munitions, obtaining the rank of colonel. These old 20th century postcards show Kenmore in varying stages of evolution. The surrounding property had been subdivided and subdivided and subdivided again. The house itself had been remodeled throughout the years, and the estate's integrity was being threatened by further subdivision and modifications. In 1922, the house came up for sale. The Kenmore Association formed, and through a campaign spearheaded by a group of very determined women, they purchased the home and began the long process of restoration and saving the property from further development. They also reconstructed the north and south dependencies on their original foundations. I always find it interesting to look at old photos pre-restoration and think about the difficult decisions that had to be made. The Kenmore Association decided to remove the decorative plasterwork on the front hall ceiling because it was not part of the original design. When you enter the first room to the left of the hall, which is now interpreted as a bedchamber, you begin to see what Kenmore is best known for, these elaborate plasterwork ceilings reputed to be the finest of their kind in America. The unnamed artisan, commonly referred to as the Stucco Man, is also thought to have designed ceilings at Mount Vernon, the home of Betty Lewis's brother, George Washington. The dining room is breathtaking. It's hard to decide where to look first, with one delightful distraction after another. The overmantel is charming, featuring plaster bas-relief with scenes from Aesop's fables. Beginning in 2001, another decade-long restoration began to return the home to its historically accurate appearance, based on more recently discovered historic documentation and new forensic techniques. Ceilings, cornices, and overmantels were cleaned, restored, and whitewashed. Inaccurate color schemes were corrected, incorporating heavenly hues. Driven by this same careful research, historically accurate carpets were added, and family portraits were rehung in the locations they were believed to have been during the Lewis era. In these rooms, the Lewis family would have entertained Virginia's elite. The conversations would certainly have echoed with the politics of a growing revolution, and Fielding Lewis, for his part, turned his wealth toward the cause of independence, manufacturing arms for Washington's army. He and George Washington corresponded frequently about building an American army. In March 1776, Lewis wrote to Washington again, this time referring to Thomas Paine's popular Common Sense pamphlet that passionately argued for America's independence from Great Britain. Here's a portion of that letter. The opinion for independency seems to be gaining ground. Indeed, most of those who have read the pamphlet Common Sense say it's unanswerable. Our manufactory has not yet made one musket. The hands have been employed in repairing the old guns from the magazine which Lord Dunmore took the locks from, and repairing the guns belonging to the several companies that have passed through this town. We have a great many barrels ready forged, which we are now preparing for the stalkers. Our men had the business to learn, begin to be expert at lock-making, about 30 of which per week we now make that are equal to the English. And what barrels are ready, I think, are better. The Tory factors are leaving of us daily. Few will remain in a month or two. Mrs. Lewis joins me in our love to Mrs. Washington and the family. I am, dear sir, your most affectionate, humble servant, Fielding Lewis. Lewis further used his fortune supporting the revolutionary cause by purchasing and building ships for the defense of the Rappahannock River, and providing American troops with supplies directly from his store. Although he requested funding from Congress, full reimbursement never came to fruition. He had given much to support the Patriot cause and died in 1781 in poor health and deeply in debt. At the time of Lewis's death, 45 enslaved individuals were listed in a Kenmore inventory. although over 130 enslaved persons have been identified as living and working either at Kenmore or at another agricultural property Lewis owned in Frederick County, Virginia. Because of Lewis's debts, Betty struggled financially during the later stages of her life, and as she was only 16 years old when she married Fielding, she outlived her husband by 16 years, dying in 1797 while visiting her daughter in Culpeper. If you have not yet visited Kenmore in person, I encourage you to go. And I thank you for visiting such a special place with me, this old Virginia home.